Caravaggio quickly found fame by making paintings of the world around him. Youths, musicians, card players, fortune tellers, all of which were painted from life, which was unheard of at the time. Caravaggio was the ultimate Baroque bad boy. He was infamous even in his own day. He carried a sword illegally and he was not afraid to use it. But as long as he made exquisite paintings like this, he was able to keep in the good graces of the cardinals and the noblemen. For me, what makes this painting so extraordinary is the expression on the boy's face. This should just be an ordinary still life, but we get this wonderful sense of pain as the lizard bites his finger.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a special edition. Normally, we talk about films that have been adapted from books, but today we're going to talk about a book and a film, both dealing with the life of a sometimes controversial artist, Michelangelo Caravaggio. Joining us today is the author of Caravaggio, A Light Before the Darkness, Ken Mora. Welcome, Ken.
Well, thank you, Margo. It's very, very nice to have you or to be on your show.
Thanks for being here. Let me, before we begin, I just wanted to tell folks, if you want to join in on the conversation, you can find us in the Facebook group. Just search Book versus Movie Podcast group. Ask to join. It is a closed group, but it's a very nice space, little corner of the icky metaverse. And if you have suggestions for upcoming episodes, you can also email us at bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. Now, we heard a little bit off the top here about this artist. In case you weren't aware, I have a degree in art history and used to work at the Met. And I first saw the film that we're going to discuss today, Derek Jarman's Caravaggio, when I was in college. I think we might even have watched it in class. And because I was studying, not long after the film came out. I know it's a fictionalized version of his life, and I think your book is much more true to the actual events. But it's a very interesting character. But before we get into his life, can you tell me, because I was just saying before we got on the air, I get the impression like how did this book come to be? Because there seems like it's not the usual way that graphic novel or graphic memoir or graphic biography even comes into play.
Yeah, and not the usual way is pretty much my modus operandi through life. I pretty much come to everything late in life. My degree in fine arts came when my wife and I got married, and we were talking about having children. And I am such a believer and fan of education, and I said, I can't really cheerlead for our daughter until I get a degree. I had a hodgepodge of so many credits and so many topics, just because I opened a college catalog and what isn't fascinating. It just I guess I should have known that I was kind of a writer back then, but I was still caught up in trying to make a practical living. So when I went to USC via Santa Monica College, in exploring painting techniques, I came across Caravaggio, and of course, stunning work, and being a lifelong movie fan and a particularly lifelong film noir fan, I immediately felt that kind of resonance in the composition, the lighting, and also the stark difference, even in the preceding Renaissance era, which was a revolution. Here you had an artist, who brought the saints and Holy Family down from the pulpit to the people's level, unified things with black as a compositional element, used that stark light foreground against dark background as a linear element, in such a dramatic fashion. And then I started, hearing, Martin Scorsese talk about, how he was inspired because you could you could look at a Caravaggio painting and infer an entire pre-composition's narrative by looking at that composition and have it almost take itself from there, and you can see how in the church this was a revolutionary way of portraying the narrative, which until that time was kind of very storybookish, like like a Peter Rabbit or some child book format. And here you were, bam! It's just like somebody introduced you into the age of cinema from that. And at the time of the Counter-Reformation, when the church was trying to bring people back, from its true allegations of corruption. I mean, there was a real reason for that, for the schism of Protestantism and Catholicism. He seemed uniquely attuned to what it was that was divorcing people from religion at the time, and that was that debate. It's just like, do we continue to try to scare the crap out of people and coerce them back to the righteous path, or this outsider who comes in with almost greater than Renaissance skills and says, no, these are people that we look to teach us how to deal with suffering. And so he took derelicts from the street to represent the apostles and say, why would they sacrifice to this tortured degree to deliver and live in this state of the holy message, and what was in it for them to engage in that sacrifice. And the other thing he did was he portrayed them as the normal denizens in dress of contemporary Roman style. And here, when we talk about Derek Jarman, you get kind of that, all those contemporary anachronisms thrown in there that people who aren't familiar with Caravaggio may not would be particularly jarring if you didn't kind of know what that was a nod and a wink to. But it became particularly moving, and then in textbooks and all these beautiful picture books you see that, but when you have the opportunity to go to Rome and Italy or see these amazing gallery tours, then you get to appreciate just how much detail that's going on in those darks that you really don't get to see until you're in front of them.
When you're looking at other examples that earlier examples of Renaissance art, notably, so his name is Michelangelo Caravaggio, but when we think of Michelangelo, we're thinking of Michelangelo Buonarroti, the earlier artist. And if you look at his work, as you're saying, like, it's these idealized super men and women, and although he is sometimes painting his contemporaries into the painting, he's showing them in this, as you say, like really idealized, very very sort of myth and legendary kind of way. And if you get to go to Italy and you get to see all of these works side by side, in the same day, the Caravaggio just jumps out at you as you say, comparing it to like suddenly going into the world of cinema is a very good comparison, because it is that jarring. And remembering too that the populace that the church is trying to lure back is largely illiterate, and so this is really the way that they're engaging with Catholicism and with all of these stories that could be used to, as you mentioned, like could be used to kind of scare them into following the church, or could be used to say, hey, these are people just like us. they're suffering just like us. Let's look to these stories and see what we can learn, or at the very least that we can relate to, and bringing people in that way. But at the center of that, you have this very volatile, controversial character in this artist.
And that was the transition for, because I mean, initially, of course, I started being curious about his painting technique. And then as I went to do research, it hits you in the face just how much is written about his criminal records. And you don't expect to see that kind of swashbuckling, bad boy attribute to an artist. I mean, art history is rife with the bad boy image, but the paradox of his ability to communicate and relate to the churchgoer, and at the same time to be personally so volatile, was such a paradox. It demanded closer inspection. And so I remember commenting to my professors and contemporaries, just like, well, sounds like it would be a great movie. And my professor at the time, Ron Risk, at USC, said, well, there was a movie by Derek Jarman. And so at the time, living here in California, there was and it might still be around, a store called Vidiot's, where you could get, back in the day when, movies came in these ungodly cassettes and stuff like that. So I went there and I rented it. I have to tell you, it has taken me 4 or 5 runs to get through the whole thing, because the first thing that immediately turned me off is it uses the palette of Louis Lenain. I mean, the first thing you see of Caravaggio, he's sick on a cot next to a gray wall, and he's describing dramatic things. And I know, being a fan of cinema, I'm a big, show don't tell. The true to your topic. If you're going to start off with Caravaggio, it's got to look like Caravaggio. I mean, the actor looked spot on, and his acting was great. But the atmosphere, the lighting, I kept waiting for that to kick in. And I go, I said, this is a setup. It's just like, at some point they're going to switch into chiaroscuro, and it's going to hit you in the face. It didn't quite happen. I now appreciate more what people appreciated about it. But still, when I, at the end of my first few attempts, I'm going, it's just like, no, this is Lust for Life meets Cyrano de Bergerac. I mean, that's the Caravaggio I envision. And how do you get to that man in this story? And then I start researching the biography, and it's just like, wow, he really does seem like an incredible turd, this guy. and then you learn that all his contemporary biographers were his rivals for church patronage and the nobility. And he didn't write much about himself, or at all. And he left no sketchbooks behind. I mean, truly an enigmatic character.
I just want to interject for listeners who aren't familiar with Caravaggio. Nowadays people are finally talking about what a monster Picasso was to, say, the women in his life. We are examining these characters, and there's a lot more talk today about separating art from the artist than there was when I was studying these artists. But just to be clear, like, he straight up murdered people. Like, we're talking about, as he's not like a bad boyfriend. He is a very violent. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and murder is among the things that we're talking about. Yeah.
And how do you not address that question? And so as you go in the Jarman movie, because as you read mine, there's definitely a sympathetic take on Caravaggio, but I don't skirt the fact that there are definite reasons why he's the violent man he is. Uh, in Jarman's, he makes that human empathetic connection, uh, but he never truly explains to the audience where he comes from to be the bad boy he was. And also the political undercurrents around the time he lived in, that these are also not addressed. I mean, how do you address the Baroque era and not talk about the wake of the Inquisition and the time of Counter Reformation and I lamented that because it started out as a screenplay. Every scene I had to pare down um, things like how artists from the Netherlands to Spain to Italy and these various uh, forms of competing ideas of Christianity used the artists of the day as their kind of communications political back channels to communicate with each other. And how much can you put in a movie or a graphic novel? It hurts that you can't do. I would love and the first pass through the screenplay came close to being made. It was optioned. I got some really glowing rejections from European companies. My Dutch director was very high and optimistic about getting behind it. Eventually the option lapsed to me again. I made a couple of runs at it, but as someone who comes in from screenwriting from the outside, it takes quite a while to know what people are even talking about when they, doing that. I remember, and this is how Hollywood works, by the way. So my daughter is at this time going to grade school, and I'm here in Los Angeles, and I live. We got in this neighborhood to get to a nice charter school area, so we wouldn't drive ourselves broke right away. And in this school, I meet someone who, and I'm talking to her, and she's in the business. A good percentage of people are, and then I'm saying, I tried. God, I forever blank on this first actor's name. Fast Times at Ridgemont High. He was married to
Sean
Madonna.
Penn.
Sean Penn, yes. I tried visualizing Sean Penn as Caravaggio as I was writing initially, and then, but but Johnny Depp came on my fingers. So and I fought it for a little while, and I go, okay, no, I see, and it would bring the empathy that I need. So he was my kind of yardstick, and then so I mentioned this to a fellow parent in the business, and she was saying, "Oh, yeah, I can see what you're saying," and I happen to know Johnny Depp's manager, and I I tried not to jump out of my skin, and then I said, I'm just barely into this. I won like 2 screenwriting awards at film festivals, which, by the way, gets you nowhere. But it did get me a small time agent to whom I am eternally grateful still. And she said, if you want, I can email him and see if he's interested in hearing. And so she did, and like the next day he called me, which is I didn't know at the time is something that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So he says, it sounds like the type of thing Johnny would be interested in looking at. You mind sending it my way? And so I did. And then like a few days later, he comes back and says, listen, I see your agent, and he's a signatory And that's okay. So I know you're not going to, sue us for $1 million, whatever. So I'd be comfortable in giving this to Johnny, but this was 2005, so you can imagine where he was. I think Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one just came out. It was already filming the second, and he had the reputation with Chocolat and all that stuff. It just like
Oh yeah,
internationally, he was a big deal as well as domestically. So he said, well, I'll tell you what, but Johnny's so hot right now, and he's got CAA and ICM and Warner and everybody throwing things at him. To even look at something, it would have to be like an 80,000 payer play, and I'm going, I have no idea what he's talking about.
Sure.
And I've talked to my director, and so I'm writing notes. So we're casually talking, and I'm going, well, yeah, so yeah, let me talk to my agent and director, and mind if they talk to you directly, because I'm sure you don't want to talk to an intermediary, when they're the deal people. And he goes, yeah, sure, just arrange that, give me a call. And then because he was a manager and Johnny was manager and not an agent, I don't know what the whole thing was, but the director was reluctant to talk to that and wanted to talk to. He said, "Oh, no, I just talk to the talent. I don't talk to these people." And so I'm going, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I didn't notice at the time that any conversation where money is mentioned, that's just an opening salvo. It's just like it's a negotiation. I could have taken things a couple steps. I could have gone to my agent and I said, hey, just like help me out here and whatever. There were things I could have done at the time. When you don't know, you don't know. Anyway, so that fizzled. But next few years, I tried to do things, and so I went on. I wrote other things. They did well in other film festivals and stuff like that. And I continued to learn that no matter what awards you win, nobody wants to read your script. And so eventually, I say, if this is ever going to be produced in a visual form, I'm either going to have to shoot the thing myself, or maybe I can go back to my old childhood love of comic books. And by this time, graphic novels have been pretty well matured, starting with things like The Dark Knight and The Watchmen and Black Hole and Box Office Poison, and Mouse, things that are bending genres of what could be presented as formerly just comic book entertainment. And so I started exploring that area, and long story short, if that's possible at this point, by the time I got it held in my hand, it just felt so incredibly satisfying, because for me, it felt like reading a movie, and I was wondering, are other people going to feel the same way? And then I was looking forward to comic conventions, stuff like that, and I'd done so as an animator, before, and then helping out my good buddy Bill Plimpton, who's like the king of indie animation and stuff. So I had been acquainted with cons and stuff like that. And then COVID hits, and so I can't go anywhere. And there are all these stories about people who successfully pivot, but I didn't know where to start, so I had no place to pivot from. I had no concept. So now we're talking. So this book came out self-published in 2019, picked up by Marcosia, my UK publisher for English, in 2020. But still, I never got to promote it the way it is now. So I'm grateful to you for this is news to everybody. But this is technically a 2020 published book, so
Well, as an author who also had a book come out in 2019,
Oh yeah, you
I
you
feel
know
your
what I'm talking
pain. Oh,
about. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
But I think what's really wonderful, and we'll talk about the art in a little bit here, and I want to show, in a few minutes, I'll show the trailer for the film. So you had seen the film like quite a while before, quite early on, it sounds like.
Well, my first attempts were quite a while ago. I saw it in its entirety about 2 months ago.
Oh, wow. Um, so but what I really love about the book, as I, after I read it, I was kind of ruminating on it a bit, is he's the perfect character for a format like this. It it
Oh, thank
it
you.
it reads uh because I live in San Diego, we have a big comic culture here, as you are, I'm sure,
Oh yeah,
aware, and
absolutely.
and I've read a lot of graphic biographies. And some are better than others, and I've read graphic memoirs, so people are telling their own story, and some are better than
Mhm.
others.
Yeah,
But this kind of has, it reads like a kind of like a fictional story of a swashbuckling pirate kind of figure, but it's true. And we have all of these fun historical points. I'm thinking about like younger readers. um I can I don't feel like a middle schooler is going to feel not interested in this. I mean, it's a real page turner because he's such an interesting character. But also there's some really big themes in here that you've touched on about politics and religion and um, wealth inequity. And one of the things about Caravaggio that I've always thought was kind of an interest. I remember thinking about it as a younger person, and now in the political landscape that we live in, I'm like, oh yeah, it kind of makes perfect sense. Where he's on the run from the law for his many crimes, and
yeah.
also and also just his reputation. There are also just people out to get him for
Mhm.
reasons that are in his control and also not in his control, and things that he's done and things that he hasn't done. And his kind of Hail Mary shot to escape prosecution is to become a knight,
Yeah, yeah,
which he does.
yeah,
And he blows that even, you know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean,
Just
uh,
amazing.
yeah. I mean, at the point where, I mean, I don't, no spoilers, but the timing just, and it's not, as a screenwriter, I would love to make up that kind of timing. But in this case, I didn't have to because it's just like he lived it for me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So just so folks well, we should give a little bit of biographical background about the artist that um, so he was, I forget, he's from a small town. Is the town called Caravaggio that he's from? Am I
Uh,
remembering that correctly?
yes. So the small town is Caravaggio, just outside of Milan. And so he makes his initial professional way as a painter in
In
Milan.
Milan. Yeah.
Uh,
And I
so
believe oh, sorry, I was going to say, I believe his family, when he's young, his family moves there. The plague is happening on top of everything else, and
yeah,
they're escaping a plague. And I don't remember, did they move to Milan and like his father and his grandfather die?
yeah.
And right?
So as they pass, and of course, you would need the miniseries for this, but as they pass, he's got a lot of abandonment and a lot of his having to be self-sufficient and sufficient for his mother who survives and then he's also in this small town he has these skills, he has artistic skills, but there's this phenomena in the Renaissance where you have the formulaic schools of Da Vinci and Titian, where which modern day comic book artists know, drawing comics the Marvel way, and with the structural elements and proportions, um, and most artists from the outside would by that time know those rules. And he would start with still life, and there are scant representations of those, and we're familiar with his table full of fruit and stuff like that. And we see those elements brought into his earlier works here as well. But there's this phenomena, I believe, that happens where this mind-blowing stuff starts happening, perhaps starting from the north, where reality starts being hyper reality starts being represented on canvas, and it takes people aback because they're still working on perspective, and then suddenly, oh my God, pardon my lapse in my art education training, but the girl with the pearly earring was painted by
Vermeer.
Vermeer, thank you.
Yeah.
And then Vermeer kind of blows a little lid off, a little bit off the chiaroscuro technique, but a lot of people on the outside still don't know the extent of this. But when you come in from the outside, you still have to compete with these people, and so you start developing the eye that compensates for that. And so even the outsider's game gets elevated to near photographic perfection without these tools. And so when Caravaggio learns in Milan that there are techniques that will let him shave time off his already considerable self-taught perfection, before he goes to Rome, he goes to Venice. A little more cosmopolitan place, a little more accepting of his sexual orientation. That my personal interpretation, and also the place where the Aegean part of Europe is first introduced to optics from the north, and I think you can see even before he gets to Rome, the evolution and clarity of his painting, and then when he gets to Rome and has the quickly develops the reputation of somebody who can copy things so exactly and so industrially quickly. I think it's pretty easy to figure out what's going on. So putting those pieces together was such fun, and in any artist's life, you kind of have to kind of fictionally fudge things to get them to fit. So in a sense, all historical biography is fictional. So I tried to get as close to plausible as possible with one of the least well-documented artists.
Yeah, that's the trouble. Yeah. And as you say, like most of the accounts that we have are from people who had an axe to grind. I think of like Edgar Allan Poe, the famous biography that most people know him from was written by one of his hugest enemies. So we have all these ideas about Poe that maybe aren't true at all, or really are exaggerated or slanted. I'm going to play the trailer for the film here.
Okay.
One of the things I think, and maybe this is because I personally was studying art history in this era, and we have a filmmaker who himself died of AIDS. This film comes out, I think it's 1986. It's his second film. And we have a film that is talking about, and we'll talk about this because you touch on it, I think, really, really well in your book, about Caravaggio's sexuality and the rumors about it. And when I was studying art history, again at the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s, it was just kind of a given. Like we were like, oh yeah, he was gay. He killed, the murder, da 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 da. And I was really surprised when I was just kind of boning up on stuff for today, that, for instance, like on the Wikipedia for Caravaggio, it says something like, oh, well, we don't have any proof that he was gay. Like we're not really sure. Like, what do you mean we're not really sure? Like, have you seen the work? What are we talking about here? And so I don't know what happened. I don't know what the shift has been over these. Something happened, I guess. I don't know, but what we're going to see in this trailer is at a time, something that was made at a time where it was just a given that we are talking about a man who had relationships with men. Everybody knew about it, and he's living in a world where he could be killed for that. And in a film that is being presented at the absolute zenith of the hysteria of the AIDS epidemic, where people were being killed, hate crimes for being gay. So when the film comes out in the 80s, it is very successful, very well received. It is notably, if you're fans of these folks, it is the film debut of Tilda Swinton, who would go on to work with him on several films, and also the film debut of what is your name? Bean. What's your name? Oh my gosh, I can't believe Sean Bean.
Yes, there we
go. Well, we'll just play it. We'll just play it, and you can see for yourselves. Here we go.
Allow me to introduce the hero of the hour, Michelangelo Caravaggio.
Ranocchio! Achille, you're blind. I did it for you. Blood brothers.
You're in love with him.
With his money.
You're in love with him.
Princess. What more do you want?
Much more than you can imagine.
And, Michele, I must advise you that these slanders against my personal life must stop.
That, of course, is heresy. And the knife is illegal.
Casso!
For those of you who are just listening to the audio of this, apologies, because a lot of this is just imagery, and we're supposed to be wowed and dazzled by the imagery, and the dialogue makes no sense if you're just listening to the audio. We've got Nigel Terry starring as Caravaggio. Listeners of this podcast will remember him as the young Prince John, son of Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn in The Lion in Winter. He plays the youngest, rather feckless Prince John, and he's wonderful in this role as Caravaggio. Tilda Swinton had been working with Royal Shakespeare Company, so although this is her film debut, it is a really great performance from her. And I forgot to mention, we've got Robbie Coltrane as I can't remember if Scipione Borghese, was he a cardinal?
Yeah, let's see. I'm
He's
trying to
he's
figure
not, but
what he was.
he's the nephew of the Pope.
Yeah, at the time of his portrait, he was not yet a cardinal. I don't believe.
Hmm. When I worked at the Met, they had, they probably still have, a contemporary bust of Scipione Borghese in marble. He did, in fact, look very much like Robbie Coltrane.
Yeah,
Uh,
they did an amazing job of casting, really. Yeah,
yeah, it's a good cast,
yeah.
and it has a very, very theatrical. I mean, meaning outlines on the stage, feeling. There's a lot of scenes that happen. We go to visit the Pope and his palace, and he's in a basically a bare room with some curtains, and he's in the costume, and he's got some good lighting. And there's a lot that we're doing with sound design. There are a lot of, as you mentioned earlier, um, what some at the time called postmodernist touches, where we have somebody who's an art critic who's writing on a typewriter, ding, 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 and it
Yeah.
makes the little ding. And at one point, a character is working on a motorcycle. We hear a train in the sound, in the background, traffic sounds that are
That's right.
not, they're 20th century traffic sounds.
There's I think a Model T or a Model A.
Yeah.
And one.
He's like leaning on the car. Which, as you say, like if you are familiar with the work of Caravaggio, it makes perfect sense. And there's a lot of liberties with the life story for the sake of the film, but the broad strokes are definitely there. Again, we don't have a lot of very much of his early life that kind of accounts for how he ends up being the kind of a volatile young man that he is. The other thing that's kind of notable about the film is that at the time that it was made, and this is how the film opens, as you describe, where he's like in this room, and we're like, what's going on here? He's dying of lead poisoning, which for at the time was what everybody was like, oh yeah, that's what he died from. He died from lead poisoning, because artists when they would paint, they'd put the brush in their mouth to make the point, and then they would ingest the lead from the paint, and that accounts for symptoms like violence and impairment of judgment and impulse control. Exactly. But I think that's a more nuanced, like there's been some DNA studies done since then in the interim, and people have different theories now that kind of both things can be true, that he probably did have lead poisoning, but they think the cause of death was some other thing. I don't remember what. But it's not a dissimilar choice in this the way that we've gone with portraying Caravaggio, but I really like in your book, can you talk a little bit about, you show his relationships in the book. He has kind of like one long-term relationship with a lover that it comes in and out of his life, but there's also women in there.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought up that point, because that was like a real choice both in the book and the script, because originally I had intended that in 3 phases of his life there would be 3 lovers, and the first chapter would have been Mario Minetti, and then you really have to, and forgive me, I forget the names, but you really have to dig deep for the names of the models he was involved with later, and I have notes somewhere. By the way, shout out to Helen Langdon's biography, Caravaggio: A Life, which did what an author dreams of in research biography. That she chronicled she followed the enigma of his life by chronicling in depth the surroundings of his time and the political movements. And it was an excellent point of departure for research into going in depth there and exploring, motivations. So shout out to her. I believe it got reprinted a couple years ago. Still available, used. Hopefully, it'll get printed again because we know even more now as research continues. Anyway, so at some point, for the point of the story, in order to make a better arc, I consolidated all the characters into Mario as the symbolic heart of his relationship with his homosexuality and coming to peace with what it was he was trying to develop as his own heart, and coming to peace with, his own sexuality and what needed to be defended about it, and ultimately the tragic incapacity to adapt his defense of it to what logically he knew he needed to politically, but because he grew up in a provincial small town as a youth, he was very successful at quelling any impulse to turn him into the Inquisition, for example, by simply being the great swordsman he was. Not a great tactic in a great metropolitan city in Rome, where even a knife is illegal, much less a sword, which he was very much enamored of carrying around.
You can't stab away your problems. That's the
Exactly.
moral of the story.
Yeah, and he knows this, and that turning point in the story. And I hope I captured the enigma of it. He has that choice that he lays out nakedly to himself and his lover, and yet the very next page, he makes the wrong choice and reverts back to it, and the seeds of that are and in the wake of that, the immediate seeds of his unraveling are planted for the rest of the story. And that's what makes a great meaty tragedy.
Yeah, and this is, it's fictionalized a bit in the film, in the German film, that the way they portray it there is that he's got these kind of rival love interests. He also has kind of done these composite characters for all of the men and all of the women in this couple that Caravaggio becomes involved with, played by Tilda Swinton and Sean Bean. And in the movie, Sean Bean, in a fit of jealousy, kills his partner, Tilda Swinton, who's getting too much attention, too much opportunity, I guess, and he murders her, but then tells Caravaggio, his lover, "I didn't do it. It was the cardinal, who's really who's got more power than I do. Of course, he's the one who killed her." And Caravaggio moves heaven and earth to get his lover exonerated, and the lover's like, "Ha, I actually did it." And Caravaggio again tries to stab his way out of his problems, and spoiler alert, he murders his lover at the end of the film, which we'll show at the outro, at the end of this. But actually, let's play it right now, because it's a really good scene, but it's not exactly what happened in his life. But we're playing fast and loose here. Let's see here. It's this one. Yeah.
The first light of dawn falls through the open window of my bedroom. A swallow flies in and swoops, dark as an arrow, along the beam, landing with its wings spread, black as a crucifix on the wall. It is, the swallow whispers. The golden dust cloud eddies in the rush of air. I lie, eyes open, facing the ceiling, on the great wooden bed, which is the bark that bears me across the ocean of night. I bury my head in the pillow and dream of my true love, Pasqualone. I'm rowing to you on the great dark ocean. You soar dolphin-like out of my sight, laughing. Dolphins are not caught with smiles, but cruelly with hooks, Michele. One day you will learn to be cruel. Michele, wake up. Cecilia stands in the doorway, holding her feather duster on its long bamboo pole. She leaps cat-like at the swallow, swishing her broom through the dusty stars like a palm tree in the sirocco. The spell is broken. Pasqualone stands at the window, smiling.
My God!
So it's beautiful dialogue. This is the scene that you described at the opening, where he's again in this strange gray room. We learn at the end, we realize like this is what he's remembering as he's dying, in that very not Caravaggio-esque room. But he's remembering this whole, as you can see that the way the light, that scene is lit, and then this wonderful dialogue over it. I'm not a fan of voiceovers. So I'm just like, it's not my favorite thing, but okay. But it's one way of showing, telling this story in the limited amount of time. But I think the way that you're telling it in your book is more a little more sophisticated in terms of it makes more sense, or we have a better understanding of him, I think, by the time we get to that point where and it's in his real life, that choice is not the way it is in the movie, but he does blow everything at a moment where he could have just been fine. He could have just ridden the rest of his life out in this position of prestige, and probably could have even just given up painting if he wanted to, but that's not what we do.
Yeah, in fact, he had that second chance. He had that mature moment, and then fate intervened. I mean, his past caught up with him in spades. And I'm thinking back on the movie, and the dialogue, and at least if you're going to have that kind of voiceover, I do appreciate the poetry and the imagery of that, especially the capturing the dolphin and how you do it. You immediately get that visceral, empathetic, and repulsive sense of it. So you do get that sense of torture, and this Caravaggio, Jarman's Caravaggio, portrayed as someone forced into making his violent choices, and as the reluctant executor of justice. Differs from mine, who's very much the proactive one, who for all his faults always has his innate sense of justice with him. What he fights is his nature, on how he handles it, and I think he knows that inadequate, and that he needs to change and repent from it, but that he has a nature that at least, especially without enough attention paid to Mario or the Mario part of himself, he would never be able to elevate himself beyond. And so when Mario is out of the picture, then his hopeless fate is sealed at that point.
Yeah.
So, and the sexuality part, because Jarman's Caravaggio is, I would think, closer to bisexual than homosexual.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas mine, I think, I kind of recognize that he uses his sexuality politically. So I think his relationship with Philide, as I portray her, is one of political opportunism.
Right. His models that he worked with extensively.
Yeah, and it's her inroads into the sensually corrupt part of the papal hierarchy that he uses to gain his patronage, which is his way of getting that protective coin from the church, but both for his own safety and ultimately to deliver his message of acceptance and compassion, which is also self-serving, but also in line with his moral vision.
So that brings me, we're coming up on the end here, but that brings me to my question that I really wanted to ask you, which is, given someone who like did this deep dive into the life of this man, and his work, what do you think is ultimately like what he was trying, because he definitely painted, he had patrons, he was definitely working for the church. That was how you would survive in those days. Like you had to have a patron, a wealthy patron, and that would mean working for the church and producing religious works, but he also produced secular works. And yet in that system, he's even at the time, regarded as quite subversive. What do you think? What was he getting at? Like, what do you think is the message that, or the point of view that he's giving us in his work and time that that we still connect with so strongly, that it's still so arresting even today, even if you don't know who he is and you walk into a gallery and there's a bunch of things on the wall, his is the thing that jumps out at you?
That that struggle is so much a part of who we are, that you can't shy away from it. Life is literally a struggle between dark and light, and that if you're living in the gray, you're not confronting things the way you need to be. And his own personal struggle for acceptance was his struggle between light and darkness. He craves acceptance, but knows that he'll never get it. But the proxy he can get is the power to live under its surrogacy, which is intimidation, reputation, the tools that justly or unjustly allow people to dictate their own fate. And he was determined to be master of that fate, or at least not surrender to anyone else's vision of it.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah. If there's anything about the way that he lived the end, especially the end of his life, yeah, it's definitely. Yeah, as Frank Sinatra would say, he did it his way. He really, yeah, you're right. He could, if he had just simply done what everyone was telling him to do, he would probably still have lived quite a lot longer than he did. Yeah.
Certainly many of his patrons successfully adopted the tactic that he aspired to.
Mhm.
So that there would have been plenty of examples of how he could have done so. I mean, the Renaissance is rife with Michelangelos and Da Vinci's who successfully made that balance and did not have to go his way. But damn it, he had to he had to insert himself.
Yeah. Yeah. I just feel like there's something he just fascinates, and the farther along we I don't know if evolve is the right word. But the farther along we go in our history, the more he seems to have to teach us. So can you tell folks, and also mention also, if you would, about the art and who's behind that?
Oh yes, and of course, huge shout outs to Cyrus Musarcia, who has experienced success with John Carter of Mars and other projects, who I still think is criminally underutilized. As people who read the graphic novel will see, there are a couple ways you can kind of go with Caravaggio. You can go for broke and try to throughout emulate the style of Caravaggio and take forever doing that.
Yeah.
Or be dynamically faithful to the energy and the art of his works and somehow reach some compromise. And when I got Cyrus's pencils back, because my degree is in fine arts, and I can I can draw, I can paint, but there's a difference between that and being a production artist, someone who can churn out 3-4 pages a week. It's a different animal than a painter by observation. And so especially by the end where I could give him pages of a screenplay and I no longer had to lay out things explicitly unless I had a particular vision of how things should go. And it was just a marvelous working relationship. So again, heartily endorse Cyrus Musarcia and his work. And you can get him Facebook and find his credits on Amazon and look up his name. You won't be disappointed. Anyway, so I got his pencils back, and I said, I can't ink over these. It's got to be color on pencils because it's just too beautiful. And so I had my colorist go over the pencils, and I was so happy with the retained energy of it that I kind of substituted for the stationary media of print and added that dynamism you have you miss from a movie.
It is action packed.
Yes. Yeah, they're kind of two reasons for that. One, I am a very visual story thinker. I love reading a Michael Crichton book because it's kind of like seeing a movie. And the other thing is, every page you have in a book, you got to pay for it. I mean, you got to pay for the art, the flatting, the inking, composition, the redoing. For me, the learning along the way, because I did the lettering, and I didn't realize how important that was to lay out until halfway through the first issue. When you have to make decisions about between dialogues and eclipsing somebody's head in a scene, that's maddening. And then when you have to go, gee, I need another page here, and then check your budget, and then have to make that choice. So the whole thing was a learning experience. But for Cyrus to help me out and get so close to what I envisioned as a movie on the page, just like, I love the guy. What can I say? And I look forward to working with him again. And if I ever get the chance to storyboard, the feature film or the miniseries, he's my go-to guy.
It is really just such an exciting story, and told in, as I said at the beginning, like great history, Easter eggs, but also told in a way, much like with Caravaggio's work, like in a very relatable way to a contemporary audience. His work, people literally saw people they knew in these paintings. And this, I think, is told in a way that is very, very relatable. And
by the way, thanks to my patrons who, as people read through the book, they were so extraordinarily generous, because I offered, at first I thought maybe a couple people would take me up on this, where I said, for a couple extra bucks, I'll put your cameo likeness in a scene.
Yeah.
And then people are going, oh, can I be the bad guy? And I go, well, yeah, great. I mean, one of my very good friends, a stuntman and brilliant actor and filmmaker, Zach Lee Guarnaccia, is the Knight Justizia, which is one of the heavies later in the book, and he makes a great heavy. And he's one of those bad guys you see all over the screen on HBO and CSI and stuff like that. He's just got one of those faces made to be a bad guy, and he makes a great bad guy comic book character. And
he does.
He was so nice in supporting the project. And then my voice actor friend Dan Warren, who plays Caravaggio's uncle when he gets to Rome, and a lot of people, including a fellow writer and someone who also treated Caravaggio's biography. Oh my God! Please let me remember her name. I will remember in a minute. That's a good trick for people like me who forget things. Anyway, so having cameo roles available for my patrons, and it's traditional. I'm carrying on with my second graphic novel, Aria for Caged Birds, the first galleys of which will be coming out next month, as I prepare to publish in probably January, February. So yeah. And that one won a few screenplay awards too. So I'm hoping.
So it's a similar kind of journey for that one.
Yeah, in fact, I would highly recommend to other comic book artists and graphic novelists. Might as well start with the screenplay. It's also a visual media, and then if anything clicks, you've already got the adaptation. So it's not a bad way to go.
Yeah. Tell folks where they can find you and this book, because the holiday season is upon us.
Well, bless you. That is on. It's available on Amazon, and newly published, finally in Italian by my Fumetti Zen. So you can find it there in Italian. They also have the Italian version in the U.S. Amazon site called Caravaggio Chiaro Volume 1. They like to split things up into two volumes. Mine is published by my UK publisher, Marcosia, and that's Caravaggio, A Light Before the Darkness, same title I used when I indie published for a few months. And that's on Amazon. You can get anywhere. And I think I might go, because the French love comic books as literature, I might pursue a French publisher, and the rest of the languages I'll probably do myself under Ken Mora Creates. And if people are interested in following me, I'm at kenmora.com, and all my various social links are there on the footer. So
that's KENMORA for those of you who are on just listening on the audio.
Bless you. Yes. KenMora.com, and I'm variations of that, and Ken Mora _ creates all over other media and stuff like that. So, except for that platform.
Yeah.
Which I bought.
It shall not be named.
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And
this has been delightful. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so glad you were able to make it. And so we'll. I think I saw you were going to be in our Facebook group. I'll add you. I have to catch up with some ads in there, so you'll be able to ask Ken questions there as well, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And happy holidays, everybody! And thanks very much. We'll be back with our holiday edition next month.
All right. Well, thank you, Margo.
Thanks so much for joining the conversation. The Book versus Movie podcast was started in 2014 by friends Margo P. and Margo D, who lived on opposite coasts and wanted an excuse to stay in touch and read more. We sadly lost our good friend and co-host Margo D in July of 2025. We celebrate her wit, friendship, and love of history as we continue on this digital road with you. Margo D's books Filmed in Brooklyn and Fever, The Complete History of Saturday Night Fever, are available wherever fine books are sold. Follow Margo P on social media at She's Not Your Mama, and you can email us at bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. Now, if you'll excuse me, my IBS is acting up. Thanks for being here.